And we are live. What's going on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube Live? It is your man, Coach Rowe. Today is Tuesday. What is it? August 1st. Man, we are in August already. Wow. I'd like to welcome you to the Men's Circle, our bi-weekly segment that we do here on the First Row, where real men have real conversations about real topics. I'm actually getting a lot of great feedback about the types of conversations we're having, and how they're resonating with other men who have these thoughts and have these feelings and have these internal conversations. And it's really been refreshing for them to notice that they aren't the only one carrying the types of burdens that a lot of men are carrying around silently. So, with that, tonight's topic is going to be on boundaries. I always like to share what the topic means, but before I even go into what the topic means to the group or to the circle, let me introduce this shadow figure we have here. You need to find a light source, brother. My brother here, Brandon Greathouse, aka Great, is joining us up on the men's circle for the first time this evening. So glad to have you, my brother Brandon. I've known him for decades at this point. So glad to have you here. But
Oh yeah, I'm an unlocked character.
you're unlocked character. But with that, let's jump in straight into tonight's topic on boundaries. As always, I like to talk about what the topic means to you. Rico, since you're the veteran here, I'm gonna allow you to go first. When you seen the topic boundaries, what did this topic mean to you?
It's always a pleasure to be here, guys. Boundaries itself. So it makes me think about, honestly, the word no, right? And us when we say no and when we don't say no. And so thinking about in my mind, what boundaries do I have for myself? What boundaries do I set for others? And am I letting people cross those boundaries? And is it because I never set those boundaries up? So that, like, my thought process honestly goes to the word no, and how most times we, I don't know, finagle ourselves into saying yes when we, even when we shouldn't. So that's what I think about, honestly.
I love that aspect of no, like literally just that opening right there already gave me one of my key takeaways of the night. just like that. But you're right on the no aspect where we we trick ourselves out of the nose that we want to hold firm to. You know what I mean? Like we know my wife is a really good example of this, where she'll ask me, well, babe, do you want to go to the store with me? And I'm like, no, I don't. And she's like, come on, babe, let's go to the store. And I'm like, well, if you would have asked me the question as, babe, will you go to the store with me? I would have probably said yes to that. But if you're asking me for something, if I want to do it or not, now I have the option of yes or no. And now that I've told you no, it's clear that I don't want to go to the store. Why would you try to change that no? And it seems like a very simple boundary, but I'm a creature of habit, and I believe people are creatures of habit on how you treat them or how they allow you to treat them. So if it's like every time I set a boundary, I'm going to cave to that boundary, then they're like, he said no, but he'll eventually come around to it. I have experiences like that, but we'll go into that later. Great, Locke, Brandon.
Yes, sir.
When you hear the topic boundaries, what comes to mind for you? Well, first off, introduce yourself because you've never been on the segment before.
What up to all the men in the circle? My name is Brandon Greathouse, aka GR8 or Great or whatever you want to call me. I used to be locked down, then I was a nobody, but now I'm great because you can't be a nobody forever. So I am a local musician, artist, talented individual that does a bunch of crazy stuff, and it's fun. So me and Roro been rocking since 1733 South Ave, and it's like yes, we kind of grew up together, just rocking on a whole lot of different levels. So it's great to see him successful in all the things that he's put his mind to, and helping other people be successful in that same aspect. So when I think of the word boundaries, I think of like the parameters that keep me in my peace.
Mm.
So like if when I set my boundaries, I know I am not gonna go past this line because this is where my peace is. I'm not gonna let anybody else step over this line because this is where my peace is. So and it's not even just for me, it's for me and my family and the people that I care for. So
I love that as far as it being that my brain goes from boundaries to perimeter of my
yeah,
peace. Like I'm
yeah.
going to defend my perimeter, and I'm not really going to venture very far beyond my perimeter because my perimeter is my safe space. It's the safety that I've established. So I love that thought process of boundaries. When I started thinking about boundaries, actually, when I titled this "Boundaries," this session "Boundaries," um, immediately what came to my mind was healthy boundaries. Um, how important boundaries are in our life. Like they are like the what's the word? They are
The
I don't even know.
guardians of your life.
They're the parameters of your life, but they're like that guiding light of your life. When you're
Mm,
outside of your boundaries, you can feel that you're outside of your boundaries. I've actually recently been dealing with some stuff mentally and dealing with that mental aspect where I'm like, yo, I just got to kind of get with God real quick and talk to him and ask him for some help through some things because I can feel my boundaries. I know where my boundaries are. And I feel like I'm like right on this side where I'm like looking over the side of the fence where I could just jump over if I so see fit to do so. And I'm like, the
mm.
damage that jumping over that boundary would cause is hella not worth it. Like, what are you what are you talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
But I think about this topic in the words of health, like how healthy it is for us. And I love that you put peace to it because typically when we go outside of our healthy boundaries, not unhealthy boundaries, but when we go outside of our healthy boundaries, it typically comes at a cost and it typically causes chaos
Mm,
in within the boundary. It's not the chaos doesn't exist. It's not like what was that movie, World War Z, where all the zombies are on the outside of the wall trying to get in to the encampment.
yeah.
No, 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 no.
No.
All the zombies are inside the wall, and you're trapped now inside the wall with that chaos, running for your life. But where are you gonna run? Outside the wall, where the other chaos is at. So I started thinking about this topic, boundaries, and I thought it was really important for us as men. It's almost like a double-edged sword. Number one, it's really important to us to keep our boundaries to ourselves, but it's also important for us as men to enforce our boundaries with others.
Oh.
And
Mm,
I don't use that word, especially when it comes to us as men enforcing, because it always seems like over masculine, over dominant, overpowering. You're going to use it, but it's important to enforce that boundary or whatever that boundary may be for you or your family. It's important to enforce those boundaries because if you don't, what ends up happening is really at the end of the day, you don't have any boundaries. And when you don't have any boundaries, what typically happens, at least in my experience with my own personal life, is you're undisciplined. You're undisciplined
mm,
financially. You're undisciplined sexually. You're undisciplined in relationships. You're undisciplined in your diet. You're undisciplined in your physical activity. You're just completely undisciplined because you lack boundaries. And so I'm going to also substitute that word boundaries with integrity
mm.
because when you think about the integrity of your house, right? Think we could go back to the three little pigs. The integrity of your house. When your house is built out of sticks, when your house is built out of straw, it don't take much to knock that down. But when your house is built out of brick, when your house has a concrete foundation, all of a sudden when you experience challenges in life or when you experience um shoot just challenges with your partner, it don't even have to be challenges in life, challenges with your partner, um all of a sudden that house comes down really really quick. And I'll close with this on this part, but for me with my wife and I, we've been married a little over a year and a half almost now, and though we've been dating for 4 or 5 years now, before we were married, our first year of marriage was extremely difficult, and I know that there were some things for me where it was like, man, you kind of start second guessing, like, dang, did I make the right decision? And I know there were some things for her where she's like, damn, did I make the right decision? But the one thing that has kept our marriage together through that difficult time was some of the boundaries that she set. So one of the boundaries, she was like, hey, look, these are my boundaries. Don't cheat on me. Don't be abusive to me. And we can probably get through anything else. Like, these are my boundaries. And so by having those boundaries, when you're going through that turbulence of a relationship, whether it's a week-old relationship or a 10-year, 40-year relationship, having those boundaries where it's like, hey, look, these are the things that keep us in check, that keep us in our space. Do you need to bring that one in, Rico? Oh, yeah, you do. I got you. There we go. These are the things that keep us in check. And so, though there were times that I felt like she about to leave because I feel like I'm about to leave. Though there were times I felt like that, I also had the reassurance of we haven't breached the perimeter of our boundaries. So though I feel unsafe in this moment, though I feel like I'm getting ready to be abandoned in this moment, I have these boundaries that give me some surety about the integrity of the relationship. What are your guys' thoughts when it comes to your experiences with setting healthy boundaries and using those boundaries to really navigate your experiences?
You can hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I think for the most part for myself, I think when we're children or when we're growing up, a lot of the actions and the behaviors that we portray or that we project when we're older, you start to build those things and you start to learn how you're going to allow people to treat you. And so I think a lot of the times when you don't set those healthy boundaries when you're younger, right? Or you let people influence you to do other things that you don't have that, like you said, integrity, right? That what you wouldn't do, no matter if no people are around or they're not around, when you don't have that, then it grows into your adulthood. And so I say for me, setting healthy boundaries probably started in like teenage years when I just decided I was going to be a leader and I was going to be who I am, regardless of what you felt about it. Right. And it didn't really matter what you felt or what you was rocking with, what you wasn't. It didn't matter. I stood on this and that's what that was. And I'm 10 toes down on this. And so I'm letting you know up front as an expectation or a standard, this is where I stand. You can be over here, right? Over here in this area with me in these boundaries, or you could be over there, but just don't cross that. Right. And so for me, I think I started it when I was younger and then it molded into it. I feel more comfortable now as a grown man being able to just tell anybody like, yeah, I'm not rocking with that. This is how I'm here. My boundaries here. Right. And so I stand for this. So if you're standing for that, we don't align and I can't rock with you. And that's,
Right.
and it's just a clear, however, whatever. So I think that sometimes when I speak with a lot of men and I look at a lot of guys, they're uncomfortable setting that line or setting that, that boundary in place, not only because of stereotypical or societal, things that people may place on a brown or black man and things like that. That's that conversation. But a lot of it has to do with, you don't feel confident in yourself to say what you stand on.
Right.
Right. So you can't tell someone that you have this boundary because you don't even know your boundaries. You're not even self-aware enough to tell somebody what you stand on and what you don't stand on because, they may convince you to do what they want to do. And so I think a lot of times as men, we have to know what we stand on before we get into that situation. So what is your boundary? Maybe you need to sit down and write that down. What are your boundaries? What will you accept and won't you accept? You probably know what you will or won't accept with family members, maybe.
Right.
But in a relationship, it's a little bit more difficult, right? Because there's different variables. There's sex that's involved. There's emotions that's involved. There's time if you've been with them a long period of time in that history. So there's all these things. But if you know what your boundaries are, hey, you can't cross that. That's what I'll say.
No, you're right. That filling out the boundaries, man. I was having a conversation with my wife, and we were talking about like why men, I feel like when they communicate, are so concise with each other. Like they're direct to the point. They don't veer off. They don't use words that can be misconstrued for one way or the other. They're very concise. And I told her the reason that I feel like men are that way is because our communication can lead to physical violence. Like you talk to me the wrong way and you're in my face, and then you approach me in the wrong way at the same time, you're getting knocked out. Like I'm not waiting for you to throw a punch. I'm not waiting for us to walk in a shoulder circle. We ain't doing none of that. You getting knocked out off top.
And you ain't gonna hit him with the beat it, the MJ.
And so because of that, it's like, okay, when I'm interacting with men, I'm very concise, and I know what to expect from them because I assume that they know what their boundaries are. And I assume we have this universal boundary of there's going to be respect or there's going to be fisticuffs thrown. Like, I assume that that's the boundary because that's what I grew up in the neighborhood I was in. I remember one time I was out talking and this one guy just got to talking reckless. And I was like, yeah, let me introduce myself. Let me introduce who I am to you, because apparently you think you're just talking to somebody who's going to talk. And there's not going to be a whole lot of talk about this. If you want, we can go into the back room. We can throw blows, come out. If you get knocked out, I'll send your boy in to get you. If I get knocked out, you can come and tell everybody that you knocked me out. I don't care. But what we're not going to do is disrespect each other, because that's not going to end well for either of us tonight. Knowing what those boundaries are going into that, you have a sense of confidence on the physical aspect, right? But if you take that and you move it to the relationship aspect, or you move it to your finances, or you move it to, you know, your financial future, whatever you take it and you apply it to, and you're setting these boundaries to where it's like, hey, look, I'm not going to overextend myself financially for these reasons. And you're sticking with that discipline, you're sticking with that boundary. Then when opportunities come up, you seem to have financial resources, or when opportunities come up, you're not overextending yourself to grab those opportunities. Those boundaries, when you say filling out those boundaries, man, there's so many different things in life that applies to, that it's wild to me. So when you say somebody walks around and they don't know what their boundaries are yet, maybe they haven't written them down. Look, I don't need to write mine down. They stick right with me everywhere I go. If it's not part of you, is me, then I don't do it. Brandon will tell you, like, even when we were kids growing up, folks smoking weed. If that's what you like to do, knock yourself out. It's not what I like to do, so I don't do it. No matter if I'm around you doing it, no matter if I'm not around you doing it. I mean, I've had people coming to me asking me, can they buy drugs from me? I'm like, I ain't sold a drug in my life. Why are y'all coming to me like I'm the plug? I'm not the plug.
Yeah. I feel like that's where I've been at the same time. Like my major boundary was like, I don't smoke, I don't drink, and I've never done drugs. None of that. I've never even tried it, because that was my boundary. Like, but when I'm out and I'm moving around, I'm in the festival world right now, and the drugs are everywhere. Like they got full on 6-foot tables lacing the outside of the room, all kind of drugs. And I'm like, man, let me get that apple, let me get some pineapples, let me get some grapes, and I'm gonna go hit this show. Y'all gonna give me my check and I'm gonna be out, because my boundaries won't even let me walk up to the table, and it won't let the people that came with me go over there, because I know where that leads. And I think your boundaries protect your future in the aspect of, okay, I can hit this coke one time so I can stay up for the 3 days to do this, or I could not go to sleep and then come back and do the rest of the shows. So it's for me, it's my, I understand that my future is more important than breaking my boundaries, because I've seen all of my homies. A good example, me and Billy grew up in the Heights. The same dudes that was selling weed on the corner, 20 years later, is selling weed on the corner. And I'm like, bro, what happened? But I don't think they set the boundary on that side for them. They might have set it in other areas of life, but like, yo, you got to do something different, because the price is bad right now, and y'all not. If it was that good, why are you still on the corner? Why are you still on the same block? Why are you not in Miami? Why are you not like in some other country living it up? But like for me, yeah, the return is not worth it. And Crandall taught me as Crandall taught both of us, like if you want something somebody else has, you got to do what they did to get it. And I watched the people that didn't set their boundaries get their reward, and I'm like, that's not what I want. I'm gonna go over here, set my boundaries, and I'm gonna move within and I'm gonna move within the limitations of what I know will make me successful. So it might sound like limitations in a bad way, but it's more like this is my standard. Like I'm going to try and give you excellence in every area that I can. And that to other people is a limitation because I seen some shady homies come in and do some shady junk and win. And I'm like, dang it, how I wish I could do that. And then 2 years later, they ain't win. It just looked like a win. So it's like I'm trying to get to the point to where I'm not even trying. I'm at the point now where I am comfortable in who I am and where my future is going to where I'm like, yeah, have fun. I'm gonna be right over here. Well, this new scheme came up. I'll be right over here. Like, oh, you can't make that type of music. I'll be right over here because I know who I am because I set those boundaries, like you said, from a child. Like, and if I'm able to stand on that since like 14, 15 to 43, and they have me prospering. I see some of the people I went to school with, they don't look good. It looks like life has been
right.
like they've been talking to Billy on the wrong shit. So it's like I'm like, yo, if you put yourself in a place where you're protecting yourself, you're protecting your interests, you're protecting your future, you win. And that all comes from setting your boundaries and knowing who you are and knowing who you're not.
Right. You know, I think you bring up a good point about the duration of boundaries. Some boundaries are temporary boundaries. Some boundaries are permanent boundaries. In my family, actually, on both my mother's, more so on my father's side, but on my mother's side as well, there's some people as well. Drug abuse ran rampant, especially through my father's side of the family. It ran rampant. And so for me, that was one of my boundaries was like, yo, I can't afford to get addicted to anything. So whenever I start feeling like I might be addicted to something, I'm like, I'm done, cut it off. Because like I'll still live life. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying drugs. That is a boundary. I'm not trying. I'm cool. But I don't need to if I might get addicted.
Keep that.
Right. He's sitting on Wednesday word, flicking my nose all night. So, but what I did learn, like for instance, gambling, it's not something that I do very frequently because I know how my mind is. It starts strategizing. It starts counting the cards. Oh man, if I wouldn't have hit on that 5 hands ago and I would have just held, then 2 hands later I would have won and got a blackjack. Like my brain works like that. So I can't put myself in situations where I gamble. If I'm gonna gamble, it'll be, I think maybe my wife has seen me gamble 2 times in our relationship. It's like I'll go, I'll have my little bit of fun, and then I'm done. It's not like, oh, I'm going to the casino every single day. No, that's not even an option. Well, number one, that's not an option out here in Utah. But number two, even if it was an option and I lived in Vegas, I'm not going to go and play cards every day. And so understanding that there are temporary boundaries and permanent boundaries. The permanent boundary for me is I have to be hyper vigilant about understanding the different things that you can get addicted to. You can be addicted to drugs. You can be addicted to gambling. You can be addicted to pornography. You can be addicted to women. You can be addicted to work. There's so many different things that you can be addicted to that if you're not maintaining that perimeter, almost like walking the perimeter to make sure there ain't no holes in the fence. If you're not doing that walk around, you let something in, and now all of a sudden you go from being, oh, well, everything was good. Like you said, I thought they won. 2 years later, why are they in such despair? Well, because they didn't check their perimeter. They didn't realize that chain link fence can be affected by weather. It can rust. It can break. Somebody could have cut it. There's so many things that could have happened. And because you didn't check in on your boundary, something that was supposed to be permanent became temporary and fell down. And that's like one of my boundaries that I had to erect, and I didn't erect it until late into my life, but I had to erect it, was not looking at women not promiscuously, but lustfully. Because for me, just like gambling, where I'm playing 5 cards hands back and getting it back to this, just that same strategy is the same way my mind works. So when I'm like interacting with my female friends now, it's just like, that's the homie, that's sis, that's family, like that's not opportunity. And there was a point in my life where it was anybody could get it, it's all opportunity, and that's where I was at. And that addiction to that made it to where being charismatic, being charming, being able to talk to any woman that I want to in the room, that became second nature to me. But the problem was, that wasn't the problem, that it was second nature. The problem was I didn't know how to turn that off. And when you don't know how to turn that off, it's like having a sprinkler in your yard that's broken, that's just flooding your yard. Eventually that water gets into your house and damages your house, erodes the foundation, and all of a sudden that little sprinkler that you just didn't take the time to fix and repair now is destroying hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of property damage.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's
but what are
crazy.
your thoughts on those temporary and permanent boundaries?
Well, for me, I think the temporary joints are like just as important as the permanent ones, because you can do something temporary that'll destroy the permanent forever. Like, oh yeah, my boundary is I ain't gonna sell drugs. Well, you know what I'm saying, real quick, I'm gonna just get this one lick off, and now I'm in jail for the next 30 years. And then when I get out, oh well, I can't get a regular job, so guess what I gotta go do?
Right.
Right back at it. So I feel like the temporary and the permanent are like in my world, they're the same, because even the temporary ones become permanent because it's a, I guess it's a guiding light to keep you where you're supposed to be going and in the direction you should be going.
What about you, Rico?
So for me, the temporary ones are probably people, right? That I
Ooh.
shouldn't be around, right? And so people come into your life for seasons or for a reason, right? So it's either you need to learn something and they teach you a hard felt lesson, and hopefully it doesn't put you in a place that you can't recoup from it, or they're there for, you know, permanent, you know, and it's a relationship that you can keep going. And so for me, sometimes the temporary is when a person's maybe in a down season, or they're in a season of vampire nature. What does that mean?
Mm.
That means they just constantly come to suck your energy, right? You know, those energy vampires, those people that you're always in a good mood, you're optimistic, you see things, you got your boundaries set, but they're always they're just pessimistic. They always coming and killing your vibe, you know? And so sometimes for me, those temporary boundaries are against people. It's like, yo, I can't rock with you in this season. You got to get yourself together, you know? And I'm not saying that's permanent, right? So that's a temporary thing. Permanently, you my brother, I love you, but bro, right now you just tripping. We can't
Mm.
have that conversation right now, bro. You need to get yourself together. And then the permanent ones are usually things that are just egregious, and they're just against your integrity. They're against your morals. Um, you know, obviously for us, all of us sound like we come from the same background or whatever like that, like snitching.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And people are like, oh, well, you know, I'll this or that or whatever. I mean, well, I was like, well, kind of how we were raised. There's just certain things I don't speak on because you don't know the background. Listen, in certain situations and certain things, you don't know the full story. And so to poke your nose into something that you don't know the story about, and oh, well, we got to, you know, because I heard someone say, like, and I'm using this in particular, permanent, right? Because people are like, oh, well, we need to get them off the street or whatever, however. Well, usually in our culture, in where we come from, there's a reason why that person shot that other person. I'm just
Right.
saying. It's usually not like
Like
serial killing or just
random, like
randomly.
I'm gonna just run up
Yeah,
and shoot.
no, it's that's not how stuff works. And so you need to keep your nose in your business to the business that pays you, which is your own business, right? And so that's what I'm saying. There's certain things, there's things against I don't hit women. That's a permanent boundary. I would never let a woman ever get me in a place to where I'm upset enough to hit you, because that's a permanent boundary for me. I grew up in a house where, you know, not in my house, but my father's, where, he was an abusive person to women. And so I would never ever do that. And so there's certain things that are just permanent, but they're usually against your integrity, right? Against your moral compass.
Mm.
But then there's these temporary things where usually the person, for me, I'll say, the person's tripping. It's usually people, and I got to keep you at arm's length for a little bit until you recoup, you get yourself together, or we have a conversation where we can talk about you being impeccable on your word, or you understanding the commitments, you understanding people's time, whatever, right? That's usually what that is. So for me, usually the temporary is has to do with people, but the permanent is, I'm just not willing to negotiate, because that's against my morals. That's a moral compass. That's just something I'll never ever do, because that's just against my character, who I am as a person.
Right. No, I feel that, because there's been numerous temporary boundaries that I've established with some of my to date closest friends. Like, they're still very close friends, brothers and sisters that I hold near and dear. But I've had to establish those temporary boundaries to protect the permanent boundary. Because I always tell people when I interview, they always say, hey, "Do you have any questions at the end of the interview?" No, I typically have asked all my questions, but my closing comment is always this: "Hey, I understand we're having an interview where you're trying to figure out if I'm the right fit for your company, but that's not in question for me if I'm the right fit, because you're guessing what kind of employee you're going to get. I know what kind of employee you're going to get. That's not in question for me." So, in the same way that it's not in question for me what type of employee my employer is going to get, it's not in question for me what type of friend I am to people that are in my circles. Like, even today, I talked to Brandon today. I hadn't talked to him in a couple of months, but I talked to him today. It was just, I need to check in on my brother. I haven't talked to my brother in a bit. I need to check in on him.
Yeah.
That's the type of friend that I am. And so, if that's who I'm going to be to the people that I love and I care about, where I'm going to check in on them without needing anything, because like you said, those vampires, they'll check on you when they light bill
They
is
need
due.
some.
And they need something. But I'm the person who's going to just check in on you regardless of if I need anything or not, because you came across my mind and I realize how precious life is. So there's been times where, I had actually the godfather of my sons. He was in this space in his life and he was really just flaky. Like, yeah, I'm gonna be there and not show up. Yeah, I'm gonna be there and not show up. And I'm gonna be there and not show up. And the thing that broke that cycle for him, or began to break it at least, was my temporary boundary of, hey, look, I love you, but I can't invite you to anything else until you can show me that when you say you're going to be somewhere, you're going to be there. Like, if we're having a potluck, I can't even trust you to bring napkins, because I don't know if you're going to be there. And that means I'm going to have to buy napkins just in case you're not there. And we had that heart-to-heart conversation that led to him saying, you're right, I do need to fix that. That is my temporary boundary with him. I love him to death. If he called me right now and said, Ro, I need you to fly to California, I'd be on a plane or in a car on my way to California. But it took that temporary boundary to say, hey, yo, this is an expectation. This is a permanent boundary that I have, and you're bumping up against it, and I need you to not bump up against it if you want to stay on this side of the fence. And so I think that, and this is already one of the key takeaways that I'm getting, is that our temporary boundaries almost work in harmony or in tandem with our permanent boundaries. They're like the soft boundary before you get to the hard boundary. You're gonna go through this, and I'm gonna feel the disturbance, and you're gonna set off some motion detectors on the perimeter, and I'm gonna know you're coming. So now it's my job to flash the lights and say, hey, stay where you are, because if not, the next thing, when you get to this fence, we shoot on sight. So,
for sure.
But I love that. The other question I have, and this really is about the safety of boundaries. I think about protecting my household, but the safety that boundaries provide us, going back to the piece you were talking about, Brendan. Um, how do you use those boundaries to keep yourself safe? And I'm gonna with men, with us being men, because I could perceive that we've all had this experience. How do we keep ourselves safe with women?
Mm. Man, I had to learn to turn it off before it starts. Like, I am not an unattractive guy. I'm a dancer, a DJ, and an MC, so I'm on the stages all the time. So I have to learn from myself to just be like, you know what? My integrity says I got my wife and I ain't gonna do anything to hurt her. So when I walk in the room and I see him looking, I'm like, oh, word, that way. And I go and I put myself in a position to be successful. And I have to literally like move myself out of certain conversations just because I know where they're trying to take it.
Yep.
And I think my wife values that because she's been in a lot of relationships with low level integrity guys who say that all men cheat, and that's what every relationship has taught her, that all men cheat. I'm like, not all men cheat. A lot of them do, but not all. So it's like for me, I had to, one, protect my wife, two, protect myself because there's a lot of weird stuff out here happening right now with a lot of weird weird women. And I'm in Truckee, and it's the culture out here is different. Like when people walk up to you, yes, I'm a witch. Well, well then, like, well, nice to meet you. So it's different, but I use my boundaries to protect myself and to keep me in a place to where I am not allowing anyone the opportunity to distract me or to get me caught in like in lust or to tempt me into going anywhere near outside of my boundaries. Like I'm in the like say I'm in the middle of my fortified space. I'm not even walking to the gate to see who's there. I'm hitting the button like, who is this? Nah, I'm good. Leave the package at the gate. Like I'm not walking to the gate to even be like, oh dang, she kind of cute. And I learned from when I was 16 that if I engage with those thought processes, like, man, she got a fat booty. It's only a matter of time before it's like, dang, I wish I could touch her booty. And then, dang, well, let me just holler at her real quick and see what. And then it just snowballs into, well, I'm chilling with her now, and if I can stop it at, dang, I know I'm gonna go over here and play these video games, or I'm gonna go over here and make a beat, or I'm gonna go over here and keep my. They said an idle mind is what do they how do they say it? Idle
I
mind
don't mind
is
Devil's Playground.
yeah. I'm not trying to be on the playground player. I'm I'm playing over here with the tools that God has given me and how God has like put me in a position to have like I don't even know how to say. He put me in a position to bring change to a lot of people, and that the responsibility for me is too great to be wasting it on low level stupidness. Like, oh yeah, oh I want to feel what it's like. For what? I know what it's like. Like I've had it before. It's nice, but it's not as nice as what people make it out to be.
Right. What you got, Rico?
It's funny because he was going into it, my man Greg was going right into it and having the conversation that I say to people all the time. So here's the thing with me. I'm like Greg, right? I'm not a unattractive guy. I'm 6'8". I mean, there's just certain things that comes with that, right? And so with me, the easy thing to do is to have multiple women. That's easy because that's what's expected. That's stereotypical. It's in my blood. My dad never got married ever in his life, and he messed with women, whatever, whatever, right? But the challenge for me was to be monogamous. And I don't put myself in losing positions, just as Grace said. I don't put myself in a losing position. I know what I'm going to lose in. I already know what I'm going to lose. You put me, I got a certain type. Now, Don't get me wrong. It was Baskin Robbins back in the day. It's 31, whatever, however, you know. But I know there's a certain type. And here's the thing: the devil knows what you like, and he'll bring you exactly what you like, and that thing will just totally ruin your entire existence. And so
Yep.
I'm speaking from experience. This is from you can probably tell, right? And
Yes, we
so
can.
I just, for me, I don't put myself in the losing. I'm not gonna go to Dominican Republic by myself. I'm not gonna go to Brazil by myself. No, I'm like I have to be with my wife. We have to go together because if I don't, I'm going to lose. That's a
Mm.
losing situation for me. Yes, will I do it? Yes, I will. Yes, I will. I don't have that control. People like, oh, you just gotta have something. Just stop lying to yourself. You don't have that. That does not exist. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist.
Oh
Any
my God.
man you know what I mean? Like you're gonna lose. You're gonna say no for a little bit, and then you won't. You just won't. Okay. And so for me, I don't put myself in losing positions, and I think those boundaries are knowing what your boundaries are. I spoke on that earlier. Know where your weaknesses are and don't place yourself in those positions. And if you so happen by chance to find yourself in that position, you got to run like hell and get out of there quick,
Mm.
like immediately. Like Gray was saying, like, yo, oh, nope, let me go this way. I already see what that's going to be. And so for me, I think that's the biggest thing. Just, I don't even put myself in a losing position. If it's a possibility, like, how you sit and you think and you're very strategic with your thoughts. A lot of people are tactical, but you got to start being strategic. If you know that in a certain area there's going to be this or there's going to be like, right? And so you have to sit and think, okay, strategically, I'm only going to talk for 30 minutes. I'm going to go over here, I'm going to drink this punch, and I'm going to leave. Because if I stay and I talk to after the seminar, there's going to be all these, well, how did you? And then they start feeling on your arm. You know what's happening.
My
So
wife did
don't. You see what I'm saying? And then they start building the muscle. Oh, you're bigger than I thought. And then there you go. And it's this whole, right? And so don't put yourself in that position. Be strategic with your thought process. Go into it with a plan and follow out that plan. That's what I would say. Don't put yourself in a losing position. Set those boundaries early.
You
No,
got to have like 3 exit plans. So you can be
You
like, you know
do.
what? Woo, 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 I'm out.
yeah, no. Hey, Brandon knows. But back in the day when I was the only one with the car, I'd be like, I'm getting ready to leave,
Trouble.
and
Yeah.
I'm
You
3,
ain't in the
2, 1,
car.
bro, and I'm gone. Like it ain't no. Oh, let me holler and get her number really quick. Look, if I'm ready to leave, it's for a reason because I know
Yep.
me.
Mm.
I know when I need to leave a space. So if I'm saying I'm getting ready to leave, either you can stay or you can leave with me. But in 3 seconds, I'm in my car and I'm leaving. Like, but you're right. Understanding like where you need to be at. Like, so my wife and I just got back from our vacation in the Bahamas, and
That's where you got that 10 from.
yeah, oh, am I more? I'm probably able to. Hey, she sees
Permanent.
to talk with you right now, so I'm loving it. But we're in the Bahamas, and we're like kind of interacting with a couple of couples, talking, and I'm watching how people kind of just move through the environment. That's one of the things I love to do is people watch anyway. Um, and she asked me this question about when we were dating. I had this algorithm that I used on whether or not I would sleep with a woman. Like it was like this is the things I'm looking for, these 10 qualities. You're going to be scaled on a scale from -5 to 10. If your score is negative, I promise you there's nothing that we're going to do that's going to ever be physical. We may not even talk. But if your score is not even at a certain level, a certain caliber, then there's really not any reason for us to move forward because I'm looking for a partner. I'm not looking for a bunch of women I can run through. That you don't have to have an algorithm for that, honestly. Like that you can just kind of free for all.
It's
But
called Tinder.
yeah, right. You can just swipe, left, right, left. but while we're at this resort, there was this young lady who was there, and I seen this young lady. She was there by herself, and I was just like, I wonder why she's there by herself. And so my wife comes back from the buffet area where this woman is at, and I guess this woman is like we're just going to say very impatient. Like somebody's getting food for themselves on their plate. She's there like in their face, like trying to hurry them up so she can get her food.
And you wonder why she's by herself.
And so when my wife comes back, she's like, dang, that woman is like hella rude and this and that. And I was just like, who? And she tells me who. I said, oh yeah, she's here by herself. And I'm sure she's here by herself for a reason. Because the boundary, because the place that we were at wasn't cheap, but the boundary of a man who would probably be in a place like that his boundaries are probably going to keep him from being in a place like that with a woman like that. It's a recipe for disaster, because a person like that is probably, and I mean, I'm making some assumptions here, but I do have some life experiences. It's probably not really a grateful type person. They don't express gratitude for you doing nice things for them. So since they don't do that, it's going to kind of be like, well, then why the hell did I bring you here? It's not that I brought you here to tell me thank you, but if you bringing me, you're acting like I owed bringing you here. Not going to work. Not going to work at all. So when I think about how boundaries keep us safe as men, going back to Rico, when you were talking about domestic violence, right? So I grew up in a household with domestic violence. And so where in your experience, you probably seen your dad be abusive to women, and it was like, whoa, that's wrong. Like, that's not right. In my experience, because I seen it happen frequently between the same people over and over again,
it was normal.
Like, oh, is that how relationships work? Right? Because you're sitting here looking at people who say they love each other. They had me, right? So apparently they liked each other enough because I made it. But you're sitting here and you're watching that, and you're thinking like, oh, this is how you stay in a relationship for 16 years. Now I have a different boundary where it's like, if I ever feel like I got to put my hands on you, I got to leave. Like, I'm out. And I remember in my previous relationship, I was in an argument, and it was probably over something stupid. I don't even remember. But there was an argument that we had, and I wanted to leave the house. I wanted to leave my house. And my ex stood in front of the door and was like, you're not leaving. Now, I'm not 6'8", I'm only 5'8", but I'm hella strong.
He said, you.
So this is when you say you got to learn how to be tactical, and then you have to learn how to be strategic. And that boundary that I set for myself where it said, hey, look, I'm leaving. That was the tactics. The tactical maneuver is I'm going to exit the building, exfiltration. The strategy is I don't care how I leave. I don't have to go through that door. That was the boundary that kept that from being, oh, this is where we insert domestic violence and then we break up to make up and the relationship lasts for another 16 years. It was simply saying, hey, look, you and I both know you can't keep me from leaving the house, but I'm willing to leave by locking myself in the bathroom and jumping out the window. How about you allow me to just go through the door so I don't have to fix the screen when I come back? That's the strategy behind your boundaries, understanding you have boundaries in place. And that's what I mean when I say they keep you safe, because we all know, like JC said, click clack back with the riffraff again. Now you got your handcuffs on you, and you got to go back and sit in jail and think about what you've been doing. And now you're sitting in prison. And now when you get out, like you said, Brandon, it's hard to find an opportunity. So now you get into more mischief trying to make ends meet. Like, those boundaries are super important. You're right. Boundaries, especially for men, we are visual creatures. The flesh is weak. It's weak.
Extremely.
I seen some attractive people at the resort, and then I minded my business and went back with my wife. My wife and I were together the majority of the time. But the one time I was downstairs and I was like, hey, can I get da 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 da? I don't care if you smile. I don't care if you bat your eyelashes. None of that matters, because as soon as I get this food, I'm back to the room with my wife. Because the longer you sit down there in the environment, it's like secondhand smoke. I can't sit in a room full of people smoking and not inhale smoke. Come on, man. Like, what are you?
That's right.
What are you doing?
And not leave smelling like smoke.
Damn, say that
It's
again.
on you. It's not just going
It's
to
on
be in
you.
you. It's going to be on you too.
It's on you.
Yeah,
So,
you carry it with you. That's true. You ain't just going to inhale some smoke. You go smell like smoke. It's going to be on you. I do want to go back to something that you said, Brandon, as far as the boundaries and the responsibility that come with erecting boundaries. It's work, but I could go all into the spiritual aspect of why your boundaries are tested and why the devil wants you to fail. I could go all into that, but the reality is I look at just even doing the first row, right? Being, whether it's a Wednesday word, financial matters, men's circle, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. Having a platform like the first row, how great would it be? And I don't mean great in the literal great sense, but how great would it be for me to fail at that, to be disappointing, to disappoint people who are potentially mirroring and matching the advice that I give on a weekly basis. Like the level, we tend to think that our boundaries are only protecting like what's near and dear to us, right? But I did a Wednesday word years ago. I can't even remember the title of the Wednesday word, but I do remember the premise of the Wednesday word was about how people are following our lead that we have never met because of people who are following our lead.
say it again.
Right? Like,
that's it.
There's literally people who are being influenced by your influence, but they don't know that that influence came from you. So imagine if the person who was following your influence directly to you sees you as a hypocrite, right? Sees your hypocritical nature. All of a sudden, they're like, I ain't following that because that's bullshit. Mm-hmm. And now those secondary, tertiary levels of influence don't exist. It's almost like stifling the growth of a plant. If you don't give the plant the elements that it needs and the space that it needs to grow, it dies because it's all caught up and wound up into one little ball and not enough nutrients from the sun, not enough air, not enough nurture. And so it dies. And so I really want to touch back on that, on about the importance of our boundaries and fighting sometimes. I'm going to say fighting to keep those boundaries up, not even just for our own sakes, but for the sakes of those who are mirroring and matching our behaviors.
I can attest to that as a dance teacher in the Northern California area. I've taught most of the hip hop scenes, and it's crazy. There was an incident where we were at this Lolly Cup jam, and it was two of my students against me and one of my students, and the two were like, I feel like it got broken down to me later that they're hurt that I wasn't the example that they needed, like, of unconditional love, because everybody looked to me like a dad. I'm like, I ain't nobody's daddy. I'm teaching you dance. But in their eyes, they're like, he's always got everybody's back and he turned on us. Like, I didn't turn on you. Y'all was doing some shady junk and I had to let you guys go. But in the battle, we're going back and forth, we're dancing, and one of them, Billy knows I'm from the Heights, one of them hit me in the face with a crump move. Like, I think he did it on purpose, and the Heights came up, and I just started to swing, and I looked at the front row, and it's all of the little kids in the dance scene, and I'm like, I want to take your head off right now, but I'm gonna step back because I am the only black male representative that is moving with integrity in the scene right now. I am the last hope of something greater, because everybody else is wilding. Like, I'm teaching my team about integrity, and these niggas is trying to smash everything moving. And I'm like, yo, you got to chill. Like, and then they're doing shady business. Then they're like I take you on a job and you over there trying to book like 4 or 5 side jobs because you guys have no integrity. And I'm like trying to teach this to them the way it was taught to me, and I had to literally pull back and be like, you know what? I have to carry myself at a different standard. Even though right now the heights want to come out and I want to dump, I have to move at a higher standard. And I at in the present moment, I did not like it at all. But the respect that I got later was definitely worth it, because it was like, man, I'd have welled off on them, but I understand, like, man, like your self control is crazy. Like all these, I was like, it's not my self control; it's the kids in the front row. If these kids in the front row wasn't here, we'd have been fighting, and I guarantee you, I wasn't going to lose.
Right. For my next trick in this battle,
a duke. So, but that is for me like the responsibility of being a man and moving within your boundaries, and within, like, sometimes you gotta like swallow your pride and just not knock a nigga out when you know you could. But that's a part of the responsibility side for me, because imagine the principal of the school is out there thumping with the students. Can you respect the school? Like,
now go to class.
Like, ain't no way, and ain't no parents bringing their kids there. It's you disrupt the whole system. It's now torn down. So it that for me was like a good eye opener for the responsibility that I had to carry. And now that I'm not a part of the dance scene anymore, I still can walk in any room and get respect.
Right.
So, and I guarantee you, if I'd have been out there thumping just like another regular dude, I'd have lost all that respect.
Yeah, no, I feel it. Rico had to go. He could only stay on for an hour today.
That's love.
But no, I feel what you're saying, because as sometimes what I consider myself as the involuntary role model, right? Like,
yes.
I don't want. So here's the thing. I had a very big problem with people copying me as a kid. The whole copycat mentality. Like, I had a big problem with that. Like, I remember sometimes my cousins, because I was in the generation of cousins that I was born in, I was one of the older cousins. And I just remember sometimes my cousins would just copy me. Like, they'd be like, hey, are you going to the pool? And they'd be waiting for me to say, yeah, I'm going to the pool. They'd be like, yeah, I'm going to the pool too. And so there'd be times where I'd literally be like, yeah, I'm going to the pool. I mean, I'd get in my swimsuit, I'd have my towel, I'd walk to the car, and as soon as they was in the car, I'd pivot about face and go right back in the house. They're like, Billy, you coming? I ain't gonna come, because I just didn't like people copying me. So it's really hard. That's why I say it's the involuntary role model, when it's like, damn, I gotta hold myself to a higher standard, and I don't want to. Everybody close your eyes, stop looking at me, because I'm about to beat the brakes off this person.
But it's been like that since you were 16.
Yeah, it's been like that since before I was 16. So it's always interesting, like, especially even having like the first row, the boundaries that I have to set. And my wife, especially because she watches a lot of my content, she's always holding me accountable to the boundaries that I'm setting, because for me, the things that I do on first row are kind of like a video journal to me. Like, when I do the Wednesday Word, I'm not really telling people how they have to live their lives. I'm just sharing with myself on a camera about things that I've done and experienced in my life, the reflections that I'm having on experiences in my life, and how I can pull and glean lessons from those reflections and those experiences. That's all the Wednesday Word is for me. But I just happen to share it on a platform. But in knowing so that you're sharing it on a platform, you got to live by it, right? And that's why I come on sometimes and I'll share, hey, I got this completely wrong, because that's the human in me. I don't plan on getting everything right. But what I am finding is that the more we engage our boundaries with our ego, the more likely we are to knock down our own boundaries. Right?
Yes.
Because you hit me in the face, my ego is going to slap the mess out of you.
Yep.
Now, you're going to get beat up every time. And you know, here's something that I had to start doing for myself, because you know, life and death is in the power of the tongue, right? So if I'm telling myself, if anybody slaps me, it's hands on sight. If that's what I'm telling myself, I'm programming myself to the moment somebody slaps me. And in this case, you're dancing, right? Pow, you crumping, smack. Oh, I got to beat you down.
Yep.
And the program has to kick in. It's like starting up the computer, straight smack. And now I wake up and you're on the ground. Why is that? Because I programmed myself. So I think another part of boundaries that's important, and especially in the music spit, I want to get your perspective on this. The other part of boundaries being the words that we affirm to ourselves regularly and frequently. And a lot of people don't realize, this is why I'm kind of like, on the type of music that I listen to, I'm pretty selective, and I'm still listening to stuff that you and I did like way back. I'm still listening to that because it edifies my mind versus listening to, like, I was in the car. It was my wife and my youngest son, Ethan, and the beat to Super Freak came on. The Super Freak. And
Yeah.
I was like, they're playing Super Freak? Like, that's hecka old. And then it was Nicki Minaj. And I don't remember what the first two words were. I immediately turned off the radio. I was like, I'm not letting my son hear that. He's 9. He doesn't need to hear about any Super Freak, but he's 9. I'm not letting him hear any of that. Turned the radio off. So how was your day? We'll talk, but we ain't gonna listen to that.
Man, I'm DJing middle school dances, right? So this is junior high.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm DJing. DJs already don't like requests. So I'm already like, okay, I got to do some requests because I know these kids going to want to hear their songs. The teacher's standing here at the edge of the stage to my left. And then the student walks up next to the teacher and says, hey, can you play Slut Me Out? And I'm like, well, first of all, why is a song called Slut Me Out?
Mm-hmm.
Second of all, why is this 11-year-old asking for a song called Slut Me Out?
Mm.
And I'm like, well, if this is what you're listening to, we either have to change that or your future is going to be very different.
Right. Very out.
Yes. And I'm like, this is crazy. But I had this conversation with my wife. The reason why I had to get out of the Christian music is because a lot of the Christian artists are making struggle music that has no, like, doesn't have the abundance of love and life that you get from God. It's just the struggle part. Like, when y'all get past the struggle, like, I've been listening to you as an artist for 10 years. You still struggling? Like,
right.
And for me, I am a firm believer that my words have power, and the things that I say will change my life. And if I'm singing struggle music all day, every day, Christian or not, what am I expecting the outcome to be? So I started purposely putting the affirmations of the things that I want in my music. And I literally watched my music career change. I stopped being in the little struggle churches everywhere and in the struggle little shows and like, oh yeah, I'm in this little venue that's like 2 holes in the wall. The mics don't work. I'm literally fixing the sound to I'm rocking some nice venues now. And every day it gets better. Like so I feel like you said, the words that we use, if you set boundaries around how you speak to yourself and how you let other people speak to you is one thing, but how you speak to yourself and what you listen to, it's like it's almost like a cheat code that unlocks the greatness.
Right.
So I don't know if you listen to the guy who does Think and Grow Rich, but he said something in the book while I was going through it, and he was like, "You need to write your goals down and read them before you go to bed every night, and read them the first thing when you wake up." And I was like, "Bro, this is the 20th century, bro. Check this out. Into my phone, I am the greatest MC in the world. I am the dopest DJ in the world. I am this, I am this, I am this." And I just say it all into my phone. And I put that mug on repeat because it says your subconscious will pick it up and work with it while you're sleeping. I was like, I have paid travel. I have like they're paying me to go and perform at all these different places. I went to sleep and I put it on repeat. Not even a week later, I get a call from World of Dance saying, "Hey, we want you to be on tour as the host." So I'm getting paid to go dance and watch other people dance and talk on the mic. Then I was like, I want my family to roll with me. Then Cool Cuts is now the DJ for it, and B-Boy Morris is managing it. And I'm like, yo, we hit pretty much every major city in the United States for 6 years. And then now I'm like, I want to do this. I want to play these festivals. I want to be a festival performer. The next 6 years, I'm performing in Czech every year for 14 to 20,000 people. Like, so it's like, do your words really have power? You know when everything slowed down? Not when the pandemic hit, because when the pandemic hit, I had the best year of my life.
Mm.
It slowed down when I stopped listening to my affirmations.
Dang.
So, like literally last week, I put my affirmations back on my phone, and I hit play. Like, no, this is 3 days ago. Yesterday, I got a call from my manager saying he's going to take over. He has the opportunity to take a position that will have me booked from here to Canada, the whole left side of the United States to Canada, like stops all over the place. And he's like, so get ready to perform and to DJ everywhere because you're going to be the artist I mainly put on. Today, I had the conversation with him, and you know what the people over his position asked? Can you do breakdance events in our venues? I'm like, what? No way. So, and that's literally what I used to do, just throw events. Like, and I'm a part of this crew called Rock Force, which is the #1 breaking crew in the world.
Mm.
So to do a breaking event where we're already wanting to throw breaking events. Our first one is September 16th out in what is it called? Long Beach. So, and it's partnered with Vans, like the shoe company. So it's like we're already doing stuff. So it's like, and the breaking is going into the Olympics next year.
Oh, that's right.
So,
I forgot. Hey,
and
didn't Morris make the USA team?
he's like in the last little standings of like going on, but he's going to be on the team. We already know like his work ethic and the way he moves, plus everybody else's affirmations about him. He's definitely going to represent us.
Nice. Dope.
So it's like, choose your words and choose them wisely because you're going to have whatever you repeat to yourself on a daily basis.
True. But you know, that's the funny thing about the boundary of that is it's not just what you repeat audibly. And I think that's sometimes what we think as men. Well, I didn't say it. Right. I didn't say it out loud. So it didn't happen. But what you repeat, I read this, I don't know if it was like a small little quote or something, but it said, the one voice you don't have the control of the volume of is the voice that's inside your head. Like I can speak softly, I can speak loudly, verbally, audibly, but inside your head, your voice is your voice. So if you're like, she getting on my nerves, she's always on my nerves, right? Every time you're interacting with your partner, you're going to be like, here she goes again. She's about to get on my nerves. And there's been times where I've had that as an internal affirmation regarding my wife, to where I'm coming and I'm like, hey, I don't want this to be a problem. Before I even say anything and before she even has a chance to hear anything, hey, I don't want this to be a problem. And so I had to start creating boundaries internally that were like, you are a husband that gives your wife the benefit of the doubt in every situation. that's a freaking hard mantra to drill in, especially when you come from the hood, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like
Yeah.
you can't trust anybody.
Nobody. Yeah.
It's
What?
the 10 crack
No.
commandments.
Yep.
so,
Yeah.
So
And I've had to do that even because of my past relationships. Like when I feel something that ain't right, I'll be like, that ain't right. You know about the dream. Who's Marcus?
I swear I thought about that 3 days ago. I was like, I just started laughing.
I started laughing too. I'm like, yo, but because of our past, if I don't want to keep reliving that, I have to change something. And you saying that, changing that internal voice, you're right. Like I was watching a KRS-One video, and he was like, I'm gonna do an exercise. This is just exercise. He was like, this right here is an iPod. So on the count of 3, without your mouth, don't say nothing out loud. I want you to say iPod. 1, 2, 3. What voice was that just spoke? And I was like, oh, that's dope, because nobody spoke audibly, and we heard it say iPod, and we said iPod, but what was that speaking? What was that heard the voice? And he's like, that's the real you. Versus this body, it gets old, it decays, it goes away. But what's speaking is the real version of you. And what are you telling yourself? How are you empowering yourself? Yeah, I am not an iPod. So like, how are you empowering yourself? How are you making yourself grow? How are you setting yourself to win outside of your body? And that's all in here. And I'm like, wow. He said the power is here. Yeah, you can be the strongest man in the world, but if you're weak here, you're weak.
Right. You know, that's interesting, because I had this dream, and I still haven't written the Wednesday word for it. I don't know if I will or not, but I had this dream that was wild. And I'll just tell you the tail end of the dream. Tail end of the dream, I pull up to this festival type event. It's all men, and the men are all singing like praise and worship, right? But there's a live band going, and they're killing it. It's just bam, 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 praise and worship. And they stop. So they're singing with the band, they stop. Then they're like, okay, we're going to pick it up again. We're going to sing again, and then I'm going to cut the music, but we're going to keep singing. And so they start singing with the band. They cut the band. People are still singing. Then they're like, okay, great. Now we're going to do it again. We're going to start singing with the music. I'm going to cut the music. We're going to keep singing without the music. And then we're going to keep singing in our minds. So we'll just snap to keep the beat. So imagine we're all singing this song. It don't matter what the song is. We're all singing the song. Band is going. Everybody's, hey, the band, the band cuts, and we're still singing the song, and we're still grooving, right? And so imagine the song is "Let's Stay Together," right? No. Let's imagine it's "Lovely Day," Bill Withers, right? A lovely day. So it's a lovely, and then they cut the beat, lovely day, and the men are all saying, lovely day, lovely day, lovely day, lovely day. And then they keep going, but they're not singing it. They're just snapping. So it's just like, bam, bam. But the body is still moving as if they're singing it, right? The body is still engaged with the song. The body is still engaged with the mantra. And so I started thinking like, and I'm thinking this in my dream because I'm a lucid dreamer. I'm thinking this in my dream, like, how many things are we playing on repeat that we don't even realize our body is still moving through the actions? How many times are we frustrated as men and we're saying that we're over it? Just like when women say, when you say, babe, what's wrong? And they say, nothing, I'm fine. And they're not. Like, I've started calling my wife out on that. Like, when she's like, I'm fine, babe, I'm fine. It's clear that you're not, but I would prefer for you to tell me that you don't want to talk about it right now, rather than you to tell me that you're fine. Because when you tell me you're fine, and then I don't come back to it, and you don't come back to it, and you're not fine, you just stay in a state of not being fine. And that's not okay for a marriage. That's not healthy for a marriage. So I'm thinking, like, how many times does the music cut, right? How many times do we stop singing the song verbally? But how many times are we still repeating that mantra? She get on my nerves. Oh, I can't stand her. She always got something to say. And that's playing in your mind. So now you're going through the motions. Now when you're interacting with your partner or you're interacting with somebody you love and you care about, now all of a sudden
attitude.
It's Debo 24/7. 24/7 on Debo mode. And so I thought that was really fascinating in that dream. And this is why I always tell people I don't need a channel to think, because I think all the time. But to think about how many times, like if you were to ask yourself tonight, how many times have I allowed the boundary or the lack of a boundary on how I speak internally inside these two ears? How many times have I allowed that lack of a boundary to cause me to move on an autonomous level where I'm just going through the motions? And I know without a shadow of a doubt, most of us men have experienced that.
What about the flip side? How many times have you really sat down to train your body and your thinking to move autonomously in a positive light? Like, yo, I'm going to wake up every day and be like, yo, I'm about to get it. Like, when do we set into that into motion? And that's a big thing that I've been working on myself, because I feel like I got to a place to where I'm not wilding out. I got to a place where I'm comfortable with myself. And now I'm getting to really set into and like put my roots into where I want to be mentally. Like, I want to wake up in peace. I'm going to go to bed in peace. I'm not going to be like forever fighting negativity. Like, yeah, you want to be negative? I'm that way, because I don't have to have that. Like, it's still our choice. Like, but when do we put it into where my brain automatically goes to peace, love, and joy?
Right.
And that's literally, it's the same thing with what you said, but on the flip side, like man, I don't want to keep going and regurgitating like, why is she doing this to me? Like, why is that the first thought? And I feel like that's the first thought because we haven't healed whatever we need to heal to be able to make the first thought like, man, she's probably just having a bad day, or she probably took it the wrong way, and be love as the first thought instead of like fisticuffs. So, and I know from my experience, when I started moving in love and moving in a way that brings peace in every situation. Shout out to Crandall. It made it to where I have peace that surpasses all understanding, and even my wife don't get it sometimes. She like, that dude just said the craziest stuff to you ever, and you're like, but what? Maybe he's just not happy with himself right now, and that's why he's trying to put that on me.
But I'm not taking it.
Yeah, I don't. It's not mine to pick up. But the old version of me used to be like, well, you want to go there? Let's go. The new version of me is like, that burden is too heavy for me. I'm cool. I'm going this way.
Right.
Like,
that's not mine. Thanks, but no thanks.
Well, Busta Rhymes said, he's like, that dude that just took that 10 seconds, that 60 seconds of your life, you gonna give him the rest of the whatever 52 million or 52,000 seconds. You gonna give him the rest of it because of what he said. 60 seconds. Let that 60 seconds go.
Right.
And live the rest of this like it's yours. Like, and he's like, once I realized that, the game changed, and I'm a living example. Like, I don't, bro. I have so much peace right now. It's ridiculous, and it's because I'm choosing to get my my subconscious in line with my conscious, where I want to be consciously.
Right.
So, and it definitely is a battle, but it's not an impossible battle. And once you get off of the defensive and you start offensively, like, no, I'm gonna do this. Like, what do I put into myself? Do I watch the Kardashians all day and expect my relationship to not have drama? Like, that's counterproductive, because the Kardashians, I watched one episode, I was like, this is nothing but drama and great marketing.
Right.
So if you want drama, keep watching this, and then you'll see the drama manifest itself in your life. I'm not. It's not me. So I really don't watch TV. The most I watch on the TV is a game called Apex Legends.
Mm.
That's the only time my TV turns on. So it's like for me, I want to encourage other people to offensively, like on the offense, create the piece that they're looking for. Like, and it starts off hard and weird because it's not natural or it's not normalized. Like drama is way more normal than peace.
Oh yeah,
So like, but what happens when peace is more normal than drama for you?
right. The right people start being around you because the thing is it's oil and water. It's oil and water. People who like, man, I can't get him to react. This is another reason why boundaries are important.
That part.
And I don't mean I can't get him to react because he's ignoring his emotions. I think it's very important for us to acknowledge our emotional states.
Yeah.
I mean, the level of thought, and you're actually holding me accountable to something that I started at the beginning of this year and I need to get back to. I had told my wife that for me, I don't care what happened yesterday. Once I go to sleep, yesterday is over and I'm on a whole new day and I'm not carrying anything that is not tangibly positive into the next day. And I got into a space where I was under tremendous stress and I let that go. So now I started carrying negative with me more so than I was carrying positive. And I really need to work to get back to where my days, that boundary is set to where the hard boundary is I went to sleep. I don't care if I was pissed when I went to sleep or what. It's a new day. Yesterday doesn't get to contaminate today. Doesn't get to happen.
It's not the value of the drama that comes with it. It's not worth it, bro. Like it's like the peace when you walk into a room that's full of peace, you feel like you can do anything. Your imagination is free to grow and to create. When
Right.
you got like drama and like you all you see is whatever the problem is, and that's the only thing you can focus on. And guess what you focus on is going to create more of itself.
Right. I think
So
you also bring up a good point on boundaries when it comes to like you have to figure out what you have to heal within you. I think about when before the house was remodeled on South Avenue, we had a porch in the front, and there was like a little awning, and there were two pegs that were on the awning, and one of those pegs was not secured to the ground. It wasn't supporting the awning at all. You could hit it and it would kick out and it would swing out. If you leaned on it, you was gonna fall. Like it didn't support you at all.
it's a hazard.
Right. It's a hazard. It's a gotcha. And so being thinking about that porch and thinking about the importance of healing both as you're establishing boundaries and healing before you establish your boundaries. It makes me feel like if you've torn the ground up all around the area and you try to put a pylon in the ground for a fence, that pylon, the concrete and everything, you've seen that where like the pylon has been over, or not the pylon because that's for football, but like the post has been knocked over and the concrete is up out of the ground. So the ground, not only did the concrete not hold the pole or the post in place, the ground didn't hold the concrete at all, right? So I think about how important it is to heal, how important it is to recompact that ground so that it can actually hold and withstand the thing that the boundary was meant to keep out, or the person, i.e. yourself, that the boundary was meant to keep in. So that healing aspect is super critical because I feel like what happens is a lot of us establish our boundaries out of angst, out of anxiety, out of frustration, and out of pettiness. Let's be honest, out of pettiness.
Or fear.
Or fear. But the pettiness part is I'll never again. Tell me, think about how many relationships you attracted after Who's Marcus, right? How many relationships you attracted where because your mindset would have been, I'll never again either trust a woman or I'll never again doubt the feelings that I have if somebody's cheating on me, right?
Yeah.
Those never again statements, I'll never again. Yeah. That's not necessarily a healthy place. unless
It's
you
not.
go again using crack cocaine, it's not a healthy place.
Because it blocks you from having a secure, trustworthy relationship. Because now you can't trust anybody because you're waiting for them to cheat or you're waiting for something bad to happen. And honestly, my last relationship made it to where it broke me down so much that I had to start from scratch to figure out who I really was.
Hmm.
And once I figured out who I really was, it made it to where I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna hold everybody else against this standard of trash of the things that I experience. I want to be freely open to love, like no boundaries. And I opened myself up. I was like, if they hurt me, that's cool. I've already built from the worst pain I can experience. I've already built from it. So if they hurt me, that's cool. I'm gonna just move on until I find the one that really is gonna love me openly. And I just happened to get lucky, got my wife.
No, that's not luck. You happen to get prepared.
Yeah.
That's
Oh.
let's keep that real, right? You happen
Yes.
to get prepared. So my wife always tells me, she's like, because she's older than me, and she's like, if I would have met you in high school, I wouldn't have dated you. She's like, you look like the type. And I was like, yeah, I was on some bullshit when I was in high school. It's been a good look.
What? Yes.
But
I know.
you would have liked me, and I would have won you over. She's like, no, I wouldn't have. I'm telling you, I wouldn't. I was like, okay, whatever. So we always go back and forth and play on that. I'm like, but the reality is that we met each other at the right time in our lives. Had you met me in high school, or had you met me in my 20s, it wouldn't have been the right time because I was still on the same bullshit I was in high school. But you're meeting me now in a place where I'm not perfect. I still get things wrong, but you're meeting me in a place now where I'm more mature. And I'm able, even in the wonderful thing that I love about our relationship is even when we are frustrated, when we're mad, when we really don't even want to talk to each other, we find ways to come back and communicate, to work through the issue. We find ways to be open and honest. Hey, this hurt. When you said this, I felt rejection. That rejection hurt. And thus I responded in a way that wasn't healthy for you. And it wasn't healthy for me. That level of communication that we have in our relationship allows us to be each other's. This is going to sound weird to say this because I don't know how to say this, but each other's and our own individual rocks.
And
so,
I understand it.
Right?
There's a different level of trust and peace that you get when you can say, hey, that hurt me. I don't like the way you said that. And it's not whatever. It's not the automatic defensive, because then you're like, I can't even talk to you.
Right.
And then now I have to deal with it on my own. And if I have to deal with it on my own, why am I with you?
Right. I'm gonna deal with it on my own.
Yeah. So, and it, like you said, it's you're each other's rock and individually your own rocks. So that's dope. That's foundation.
Right. So we're fortified. That's what we say. G57 classifies fortification. But to get ready to wrap, because we're getting ready to wrap the show. But I always like to kind of, before I begin to wrap, I always like to kind of get like closing thoughts, final thoughts on where you've learned in this conversation tonight. And it doesn't have to be what you learned from others. It could be what you learned from yourself as you said it out loud. Because sometimes just having that verbal conversation truly helps us process the things that we know we want to process, or we're trying to understand how to process, but we finally process them with that verbal conversation with others, because we're hearing what we're saying. We're not just talking to talk. So for you, what is your closing thoughts?
My closing thoughts, or my main takeaway, is be more actively, or start actively setting yourself up to win. Like, yeah, everybody moves with the response as their thing. Like, oh yeah, he said this to me, and this is how I responded. This is how I responded. This is how I responded. So you know how when we were in the hood, we had to condition ourselves to be ready to respond in a certain way to the thing. So how can we position ourselves now to respond to drama in a positive way that helps us rise? How can we respond to our relationships in a positive way that keeps us rising? And if you can put yourself in a positive response like space in every area, you just win. No matter what anybody throws at you, you win. And I feel like I am now like walking in that, and it's the first couple of steps, and it's beautiful, bro.
Mm.
It's beautiful. And I didn't even realize it until we're talking right now. Cause like whenever somebody talks to me, I see the brighter side of it. And I'm like, oh man, well, that's cool. But what about this? Why don't you just do this? It's a lot easier. And I don't realize the whole world has been conditioned to be on this side when this side is way easier.
It's plenty of room over there because there ain't a lot of people over there.
and it sounds crazy when I say it out loud, but it sounds so easy when I say it out loud. And I think honestly, it is a lot easier than the response of negativity or response of like unhealed wounds. Like if somebody touches an open wound, you're like, don't touch it, and you're ready to protect yourself. But once it's healed, somebody touches, hey man, that was a scar from when I went through this. And this is what I put this neem oil on it. I put the neem plant on it and it healed it right up. Like,
right.
So if you've healed from it, your response isn't back off and defend yourself. It's to teach somebody how to heal as well.
Right.
So like, man, do the work. It's work. It is so worth doing the work to heal whatever traumas that you've been through, that it's like I almost get frustrated watching other people not do it.
Mm.
So go through the work to get the healing that you need. And there's a lot of weird healing stuff. It's really just spending time with yourself and learning who you really are. It doesn't have to be all mystical or magical and like I went through all this. Therapy helps because it helps you to see you.
Right.
But sitting down in the mirror talking to yourself helps you to see you too.
Mm-hmm.
So, and when you said that, go ahead.
I was just going to say the reality is that when you do get an opportunity to see who you really are, that person makes a hell of a lot of sense.
Yes. And if you don't like who you see when you're looking at who you really are, you have all the power in the world to make that change because you see who you are now. If you can see who you want to be, you just take steps every day to get to that person. And eventually you're going to be the person that you thought you would never even become because you took the steps. And it doesn't have to be overnight. It could be a year. It could be 2 years. It could be 6 months. It could be a week. It's how willing are you to put in the work to be the person that you want to be?
Yeah, no, I love it. For me, I think my closing thoughts tonight when it comes to boundaries is it really comes down to creating safety for yourself and for the outside world on the other side of that boundary. I look at it this way. If you break into my house, you're getting shot, right? That's not a question for me. If you break into my house, my family's life is on the line. I have to kill you, unfortunately for you. Shouldn't have broken into this house. It is a way of creating safety. My boundaries are a way of creating safety for me, my family, and for the outside world, because really I have no desire to do harm to the outside world. I have no desire. I remember when a young lady told me she was pregnant, but it turned out that wasn't my child. I remember this, and I had to make a choice, and this is where boundaries start bouncing against integrity. I had to make a choice. Do you keep this child a secret, or do you take care of your child like you would take care of any of your other children, right? And I was just like, I'm I am not going to have secret kids pop up after I die. That's a boundary I have. Yeah, I get it. This situation sucks. I'm in the wrong. I'm not under any delusion that I'm in the right. I know I'm in the wrong. Right? I'm in the wrong. However, I'm not going to compound that wrong by breaching other boundaries. And that's why let me put this up really quick, because this is why I put this as the image. See, imagine all those dominoes getting knocked down, right? Or those planks of wood getting knocked down. That was the momentum that was building up, knocking down boundaries. And the only thing that kept me from knocking down the other 8 boundaries was my hand saying, you know what, I gotta set the boundary here. I gotta create a stop loss right here. Because if I don't, I'm gonna just be a boundary breaker, right? I'm gonna just break all boundaries. So at that point, I go back to being that undisciplined man. And the reality is as men and being on the men's circle, if we're saying that we are men, there is a level of discipline. There's a level of accountability. There's not an expectation of perfection. So when we do fall short, when we do fail, it's, hey, stand up straight, young man. You made a mistake.
Yeah.
It's time to learn.
You know what's really crazy? This next generation is not learning that you made a mistake, stand up to it and fix it. They just push the blame to somebody else, and I've never made a mistake. Or they're so afraid to make a mistake that they don't move. And that to me is scary, because I'm like, y'all got to lead the world at some point. Like, yo, make your mistakes now. Like, learn now. But it's like, oh, it's scary seeing the fear be the boundary, because now they're not even able to step out into the world because of the fear.
Right. So they just stay in shelter. They stay in the bunker.
Yep.
They were like, yeah, there was this thing I seen one time. It was called the sky.
There's a lion in the street. It'll eat us if we go outside.
Mm-hmm.
Proverbs.
Yep. Roman, waiting to see who it can devour.
Yeah. So it's like, I love the fact that you're even having these conversations. So, man, I know you're really good at talking to people. You should find a sponsor for these so that you can keep these going even longer.
Yeah,
get them on a larger scale. Yeah, be like, yo, this video was presented to you by woo woo woo, and then we'll go on with the show.
Hey, maybe we'll see about that one. I don't know. I'm big on. I only am willing to be sponsored by things that I actually believe in.
Yes.
I'm like, yo, no, I don't use that. I can't get down with it. But
well, that's what it's supposed to be. But that's another thing, because that's part of your boundaries.
Right.
A lot of people are sponsored by whatever. When they said there's the number one spokesperson for tampons was a dude, or it was a biological male, but he's transitioned.
Yeah. Okay. Brought to be part by exactly, like, nah.
I'm like,
that's where I struggle with is I mean, this is why I'm not in sales, because I'm like, I can only sell products that I believe in, and if I don't believe in the product, then I'm not going to sell the product, because I'll quickly tell you, hey, you don't need this. You don't need this.
Because you're honest.
Right. But people are honest with me because it's the same way I approach salespeople. Hey, so tell me, this is what you're selling. This is what my setup is. Does this seem like it would make sense for me to do? They're like, no, it doesn't. Okay, then thank you. Yeah.
On to the next one.
So, but that's what I got tonight. Really quick. So I know this is your first time being on the men's circle, but at the end of every segment, I do the key takeaways of what I've gathered throughout the night. And tonight I have 7 of them, and I probably could have more. I just stopped at 7 because I was like,
7 is good.
Yeah, number of completion. So the first takeaway that I grabbed from tonight's conversation was, don't guilt yourself out of your boundaries. oftentimes we as men will cave. Going back to when I tell you, if my wife says, do you want to go to the store with me? And I say no, right? Well, now I've said no, so I should be able to establish that boundary and keep that boundary. But then we'll be like, oh, if I don't go, she's going to be mad later on. And you go back into that negative inner voice. And then you don't go and she comes back and you're like, why you got an attitude? She may not even have an attitude, but because your inner voice has been saying she's going to have the attitude, now you're picking up on her just being out of
created the attitude.
Right. Exactly. So don't guilt yourself out of your boundaries. When you establish your boundaries, be willing to stand firm on them. As Rico said before he left, he said, if that's your square, stand on it. Stand on it. Be willing to stand on your square and be accountable to your square. If your boundary is, hey, I'm not getting down. One of the boundaries my wife and I had when we were dating was like, yo, we're not really going to jump into the sexual intimacy part. We're going to hold off on that part. And being in that world, no, we didn't hold off till marriage, but we held off for a pretty decent time. But being in that space, it was like, that's a boundary. And I remember one time we came close to that boundary and it was like, this isn't the time yet. So we both were like, nah, like, let's call it a night. Good night. Good night. Like, done. So don't guilt yourself out of your boundaries. If you have a boundary, keep it. And if people have a problem with your boundaries, let that be their problem, not your problem to fix. Takeaway number 2 is boundaries protect your future. You said that, Locke. Boundaries protect your future. They are the if I'm thinking about bowling, the bumper rails, right? They are what keep
they keep you in lane.
They keep you in the lane, your lane that you're supposed to be in. So realize that if you have a boundary that you need to that you're bumping up against, it's trying to keep you within the guidelines of the person that you said you wanted to be. And if you no longer want to be that person, then you need to address what boundaries go with the person that you're trying to become to see if that's a boundary you need to remove or a boundary you need to keep.
Get them.
Get them. Key takeaway number 3 is temporary and permanent boundaries should work in harmony. There's not a boundary about me that's temporary that doesn't support my permanent boundaries. Those temporary boundaries, and I agree to an extent with Rico in the aspect of it's typically for people. And sometimes the people is you, just so we're clear.
It's me. It's me.
Right. It's me. I am people. So, but temporary and permanent boundaries should work in harmony. And if you find that a temporary boundary is out of alignment again with a permanent boundary, then you need to ask yourself why that temporary boundary is being erected. For instance, or a temporary boundary is being a permanent boundary is being temporarily suspended. I guess that's the way I would say that. Key takeaway number 4 is, I don't know because I didn't put the rest of it. Boundaries develop us though. And I guess we'll go with this because now I have to go based off of what I'm thinking. Boundaries do develop us in a way. They develop us into, again, that person that we are going to become. They push us and they test us and they find out if we really are. They help us find out if we really are who we say we are. Going back to having somebody tell you that they're pregnant with your child and they're not. That was a very extremely difficult test for me to go through at that point in my life. To where I'm literally like, dang, all this stuff I talk about, how important it is to be a father, how important it is to be present with your kids, all these things that I'm talking about, now we're about to find out is that for real or for play? And I remember I had one friend during that time, her and I were talking quite frequently, and she was just like, I watched you go through that. And even though the outcome is that it wasn't your kid, you were a father until you found out he wasn't your kid. You weren't not a father until you found out he was your kid. And that speaks volumes about your integrity. And so boundaries develop us, and they are a very strong reflection or indicator of the integrity that we have as men. Key takeaway number 5 is don't let your ego breach your boundary.
Woo.
Man, like there's so many different ways I can go with this, but I'm gonna just keep it short and sweet. Don't let your boundary be at the mercy of your ego. Because
then your boundaries will fall apart every single time.
Because your ego is extremely
Fragile.
emotionally reactive. And the moment you allow your ego to be in the driver's seat, you gonna hit something. Guaranteed, you're gonna hit something. So don't let your ego breach your boundaries. Your boundaries are your boundaries for a reason. Allow them to keep your ego in check, not for your ego to check them. Key takeaway number 6 is sometimes our boundaries are uncomfortable. Sometimes they're uncomfortable. Sometimes they make us squirm. Sometimes they make us mad because we can't do what we want to do when somebody's crumping and slaps us in the face.
Yes.
But your boundaries are there for a reason. And that is where those boundaries begin to develop us, because they keep us on the trajectory of where we're trying to go, not where we're at.
Add on, if you are very comfortable being uncomfortable, you are always growing. So, like, if my boundaries make me uncomfortable, that means I got another boost in my growth, and I'm on to the next level. So I'm glad they make me uncomfortable because they keep me growing. If my boundaries are so comfortable that I'm not growing, that means I need to set new boundaries.
Right. Or you just ran over them and you don't know it. Dang, I ain't felt no boundaries in a minute. Yeah, because you just ran over all of them.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
And then last but not least, key takeaway number 7 is boundaries are strongest on a hill foundation. To your point, Brandon, oftentimes our boundaries are weakened because we in ourselves are weakened. It's almost like having a compromised immune system. You go around somebody who's sick and all of a sudden you get sick because your immune system was compromised to begin with. It wasn't in a position to fight or fend off infection or disease. And when we're establishing a boundary on unhealed foundations or traumatic foundations, it's not a strong enough post to hold the fence up and to hold the line when that boundary is tested, right? So key takeaway number 7, boundaries are strongest on a hill foundation. Do the work. There ain't no other way to say it. Do the work.
Yeah.
Because nobody's going to do it for you. Nobody.
That part.
Not even nobody's going to do it for you. Let's go back. Nobody can do it for you. That's the reality. I think about that from as a perspective as a father. Like, there's so much that I want for my sons. There's so much that I want for my daughter. But I can't do the work for them no matter how much I wish I could. And that's what healing is. It's work that only you can do. And until you get there.
I think the cooler part is you can put yourself in a place where that healing comes quick, or you can put yourself in a place where that healing never even starts.
Right.
So it's your choice to position yourself to let that healing be the foundation.
True. I love it. I love it. So that's what we got for tonight, my man, on the men's circle. Booyaka! I definitely appreciate for you guys who are tuned in live, man. I can't see where it is, but for those who are watching live, greatly appreciate you guys for tuning in live this evening. Thank you, great, for joining us tonight. Rico, I know you're not here, but if you catch the replay, thank you for joining us this evening. To all the men.
Shout out to Rico.
Shout out to Rico. Suavemente. But to all the men who are watching live and for those who are watching via the replay, tons of love. Appreciate the support. Do be on the lookout. We are going to have a micro conference in Sacramento, California on September, I want to say 24th. Let me look at my calendar really quick because I keep losing track of this date in my mind. It is September 24th. I'm going to be more details about that in about approximately 2 weeks. So either the next men's circle or the men's circle after that, I'll be dropping the details on that. But stay tuned. It's going to be a micro conference, so it's going to be a very small, quaint, maybe 15 men, but an opportunity to have the men's circle come to a live space where we can support each other, establish some brothers keepers, and start building relationships, because I truly believe that the reason I have this heart for men and have created this space for men is because not only do I need it, but I know there's other men out there that 100% need it. So other than that, as always, when it comes to the close of anything on the first row, if you like this video, please share it. If you share it, please like it. I'm always happy to engage with you in the live chat. Appreciate you in here, Art, tonight. But I'm also happy to engage with you for the first week that the content is up. So if you leave a comment on the actual video, whether on YouTube or Facebook, I will respond to that comment within the first 7 days. And then after that, I'm off to the next video or session or whatever it is that I'm doing. But other than that, I thank you guys for tuning in live. Until the next time, one love, peace, and God bless. Thanks
Peace.
on the first row.